Hi, I'm 30, and I just found out my mom might not be dead. She died when I was 15. At least, that's what I was told. I was a sophomore in high school when it happened. My dad got the call from a hospital 2 towns over. He came into my room, sat on the edge of my bed, and told me she'd died in a car accident. It was one of those moments that burns into your brain. He didn't cry, but his eyes looked hollow. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? There was a closed casket funeral. I remember people whispering how young she was, how tragic it all was. I remember watching the coffin lower into the ground. I remember people bringing food and flowers and saying things like, "She was so full of life." After that, it was just Dad and me. He never remarried, never really dated, and barely talked about her. Over time, the grief faded, at least on the surface. I moved out at 19 and tried not to look back too much. He stayed in the same old house. I visited once or twice a year, but it always felt cold, even when we tried to be warm to each other. Then 3 weeks ago, my dad had a stroke. It wasn't fatal, but he lost a lot of motor function on his right side and ended up in a care facility while he recovered. I went back to his house to pack things up, sort through bills, and start getting things in order for what might be a permanent move. I thought it would just be a routine cleanup, but then I found a box in the attic. It was hidden under layers of insulation, right behind the water heater. I was just trying to shut off the valve for a leaking pipe when I saw it, an old wooden box, the kind that looked handmade. There was no lock, just a rusted latch. Inside the box were photos, a few letters tied in string, and a single driver's license. The license belonged to my mother, but the name was different. Not a fake version of her name either. A completely different identity, issued 3 years after she supposedly died. The picture was definitely her. Older, but still her. And suddenly, everything I thought I knew about my life cracked open like an egg. I sat there in the attic for what felt like an hour, holding that driver's license in my shaking hands. Her name on it was Lena Hart. My mom's real name, at least the one I'd always known, was Emily Darnell. Same birthday. Same face. Different name. And the license was issued 3 years after her funeral. I kept checking the issue date over and over. It wasn't fake either, looked legit, with the state's seal and everything. The photo looked like her but older, maybe early 40s. And in the background of the license picture? Palm trees. She was alive, and she was in Florida. I should have left the box right there and called the police. Or maybe my dad. But I didn't do either of those things. Instead, I opened the letters. There were about 10 of them, each dated over the span of 5 years. The earliest one was written 6 months before her death. They were signed L. The handwriting looked familiar but different, like someone trying to disguise their natural style. I knew it was hers though. The loops, the slanted cursive, no one writes a capital E like that except her. The first letter wasn't anything dramatic. It was more like a diary entry than anything. I can't take much more of this. I know he's watching everything I do. And then, I have to disappear. I don't want to. But if I don't, I won't survive this. The rest? They got darker. There were references to him throughout, which I assume meant my dad. Things like, he checked the mileage on the car again, and he's getting worse, talking to himself in the garage at night. There was even one that said, if something happens to me, don't believe it was an accident. I didn't know what to think. My dad had always been a quiet, stoic guy, but never violent. Never threatening. But now? I wasn't sure about anything anymore. The final letter was dated exactly 2 months before her death. It ended with, "If you ever find this, I'm sorry. I hope it means I made it. And if I didn't, maybe this will explain why I had to go." I just sat there, stunned. And then I did something I probably shouldn't have. I took pictures of everything and packed the whole box into my suitcase. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet, but I knew I couldn't leave it here. Not with him. Because now, I had questions, and no idea who I could trust to answer them. Back at my apartment, I spread everything out on my kitchen table, every letter, every photo, the license, and just stared. My mind was racing with possibilities. What if my mom had been in danger and had to fake her death? What if my dad helped her disappear and lied to me all these years to protect me from the truth? Or worse, what if he was the reason she had to run? I couldn't sleep that night. Every creak in my apartment made me jump. Every thought circled back to one terrifying realization: my mom had planned her own disappearance. The next morning, I did something I never thought I'd do. I searched her new name, Lena Hart, online. At first, nothing. I tried Lena Hart plus Florida, then added her birth year. Still nothing concrete. But then I clicked on the Images tab out of desperation. And there she was. In a community newsletter photo from a tiny beach town 2 states away. The image quality was low, but I recognized her smile instantly. Her hair was streaked with gray, and she wore oversized sunglasses, but I knew it was her. She was standing next to a man I didn't recognize, holding a tray of cookies at what looked like a local fair. The caption read, "Lena and Richard Hart, winners of the Bayshore Bake Off." Richard Hart. So she'd taken his last name? Were they married? Was that how she got the new identity? My stomach turned. She looked happy. Relaxed. Like someone who hadn't buried her past but burned it completely. All this time, while I was mourning her, she was baking cookies and smiling in community newsletters? I couldn't stop staring at the photo. Then I noticed something strange. On her wrist, barely visible under her sleeve, was the same bracelet I'd made her when I was 10. Little blue and white beads spelling out Moem. I hadn't thought about that thing in years. I assumed it had been buried with her. That's when it hit me. She hadn't let go of me completely. She'd kept the bracelet. It was a small thing, but it cracked me open. I didn't know what I was feeling: anger, betrayal, heartbreak, confusion. All of it tangled together like fishing line. But beneath it all was a question I couldn't ignore. Why did she let me believe she was dead for 15 years? And why now, when I was so close to the truth, did it feel like I was about to uncover something much darker than I ever expected? I couldn't keep this to myself anymore. I'd spent the entire night pacing my apartment, going through the letters again, zooming in on every blurry pixel of that photo, hoping it would somehow give me answers. But the only thing I got was a pounding headache and a pit in my stomach that kept getting deeper. So I did something reckless. I drove to the rehab facility where my dad was recovering. I hadn't planned what I was going to say, I just knew I needed to look him in the eyes. I had to know if he'd been lying to me for half my life. He was in a wheelchair by the window, half asleep, with a blanket draped over his legs. He looked smaller than I remembered, fragile. But when he saw me, he perked up like nothing had changed, like everything was still normal. I sat down, holding the photo in my pocket so tightly the edges started bending. For a while, I just made small talk, asked about his physical therapy, let him complain about the cafeteria food. But the whole time, my pulse was hammering in my ears. Then I asked him about Mom. The air changed instantly. His face stiffened. He reached for his water like he needed something to hold on to. I told him I'd found a box in the attic. Letters. A license. Her real name. Her new name. His hands trembled. I didn't even need him to speak. The look in his eyes said it all. He knew. He stared at me for a long time, then finally whispered, "You weren't supposed to find that." I felt like I couldn't breathe. He wouldn't give details. He just said, "She was scared. She said I'd hurt her." Then, quietly, almost ashamed, I never laid a hand on her. Not once. But fear doesn't always come from bruises. I realized that in that moment. Maybe it wasn't violence. Maybe it was control. Gaslighting. Manipulation. Something I never saw, even though I lived under the same roof. He admitted he helped with the fake accident. Said she planned the rest, but he played along for my sake. Claimed it was the only way she'd leave peacefully. That she'd promised to stay away forever. He wasn't supposed to keep anything. But he couldn't bear to throw it all out. Then he looked at me and said the one thing that shattered what little faith I had left. "She didn't want you to come looking. She said it'd be better if you believed she was gone." I left without saying another word. And as I walked to my car, one thought kept repeating in my head like a drumbeat I couldn't silence. What kind of mother fakes her death and leaves her child behind? When I got home, I couldn't sit still. My body felt like it was moving faster than my thoughts. My mom was alive. My dad helped cover it up. And for 15 years, I'd been walking around with this hole in my life, blaming fate, when the truth was, they chose this. Both of them. I pulled out my laptop and started searching for anything about the town from that newsletter, Bayshore, Florida. Tiny place, mostly retirees, no major news coverage. But they had a Facebook group, of course they did. Bayshore Community Bulletin. I joined it using a burner account. It was mostly harmless posts about missing cats, church bake sales, and Tuesday bingo nights at the Marina Clubhouse. But I scrolled obsessively, digging through months of posts, searching every photo, every comment thread for her face. And finally, after about an hour, I found her again. She was in a photo from last year's Christmas parade, walking beside a man, probably Richard Hart, dressed as elves, pulling a red wagon with 2 toddlers inside. My breath caught in my throat. Not because of the man, but because of the kids. She was holding the hand of a little girl, maybe 3 years old, and laughing like someone who hadn't left their only child behind in a cold funeral home 15 years ago. The caption read, "The hearts in their grandkids leading the parade." Grandkids? It didn't make sense. Unless she'd remarried someone who already had kids, and now she was just Grandma Lena, beloved citizen of Bayshore. Or maybe they weren't grandkids. Maybe they were hers. Was it even possible? Could she have started over and had a new family? A part of me was hoping it wasn't true. Because if she faked her death and left me behind just to raise a new child, then this wasn't just about fear. It was about replacement. And I wasn't sure which betrayal was worse, the lie she told to vanish, or the life she built afterward as if I never existed. But the choice was made for me the moment I saw her name listed under a community craft fair flyer for next Saturday. She was going to be there. In person. And for the first time since she died, I knew exactly where she would be. I was going to Bayshore. The drive to Bayshore was nearly 10 hours. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Not even my best friend. I packed a bag, left a note for work saying I needed personal time, and got on the road before I could second-guess what I was doing. It was reckless. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I'd say to her, or even if I'd say anything at all. Maybe I just needed proof that she was real. That I wasn't going crazy. That this woman I'd buried in my memory hadn't vanished into thin air, but was flesh and blood, walking around craft fairs like everything was fine. Bayshore was smaller than I expected. One grocery store, one gas station, and about 300 golf carts. It looked like the kind of place where nothing dramatic ever happened, where people smiled at strangers and waved at stop signs. And there I was, paranoid, exhausted, and absolutely buzzing with adrenaline, as I parked outside the community center. The flyer said the event started at noon. I got there at 11:45. People were still setting up tables with jams, hand-knit sweaters, ceramic turtles, the usual small-town stuff. I walked around like I was just browsing. My eyes scanned every face. My heart was pounding like it wanted to crawl out of my chest. Then I saw her. At the far end of the lot, setting out earrings on a display rack. She looked older than I remembered, but not by much. Still beautiful, still with that sharp grace she always carried, still with the same slight tilt of her head when she concentrated. She was wearing a floppy straw hat, sunglasses, and a name tag that read Lena Hart, handmade jewelry and beaded gifts. Beads. She was still making beaded bracelets. Like the one I gave her when I was 10. The one she kept. The one that ended up in the photo. My legs wouldn't move. I just stood there, locked in place, staring at her like I was seeing a ghost. But she wasn't a ghost. She was real. Laughing with a customer, bagging up a necklace, wiping her hands on her jeans. She looked happy. And something about that, seeing her so happy while I'd spent 15 years wondering what I did wrong, made my stomach twist into something I didn't recognize. Something bitter. Something sharp. Then she looked up. And for a split second, our eyes met. I don't know if she recognized me or not. Her expression didn't change. She just gave me a polite nod, like she would to anyone else walking by. Like I was no one. Like I wasn't her child. I turned around and walked away, nearly tripping over a folding chair as I stumbled out of the lot. I made it to my car, slammed the door shut, and just sat there, shaking. She didn't recognize me. Or worse. She did. And still looked at me like I was a stranger. I didn't drive back home. Not yet. I parked on a side street near the community center and just sat there, watching people drift in and out of the craft fair. Kids with sticky faces, couples carrying paper bags, retirees walking hand in hand. All completely oblivious that the woman at the beaded jewelry table had faked her death and left a child behind to grow up wondering why. I wasn't sure what I was waiting for. Maybe I thought she'd come find me. Maybe I thought I'd see her hesitate, look around like something clicked. But nothing happened. Eventually, I worked up the nerve to go back. Not to confront her, at least not yet. But to see her one more time. I kept my head down, sunglasses on, hoodie up even though it was too warm for it. I walked slowly, like I was browsing again. When I got to her booth, she was talking to an older man, probably Richard Hart. She was smiling. Genuinely. Laughing at something he said. And then I saw it. On her right wrist. That bracelet. The blue and white one. Beads spelling out Moem. My legs nearly gave out. She had kept it. All these years. She wore it in public. And suddenly I felt sick, because it meant she hadn't forgotten me. She'd chosen to leave, yes, but she remembered. Every day. Enough to wear something I made when I was a kid like it still meant something. So why? Why keep a part of me if she didn't want me in her life? I walked past the booth without stopping. I couldn't do it. Not yet. I felt like a volcano with the lid sealed shut, pressure building with nowhere to go. I kept walking until I was out of sight, then found a bench behind the community center and sat there, trying not to cry. That's when I heard her voice, from around the corner. Muffled. Low. But I'd know it anywhere. She was talking to someone on the phone. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I swear I wasn't. But when I heard her say, "He would have hated me if I stayed," I froze. Then she added, "No, I'll never reach out. I already ruined that life once." My blood ran cold. She was talking about me. She thought she'd ruined my life, and she was choosing to stay gone because of it. She didn't know I was alive and burning with questions. She thought silence was the kindest thing she could offer. I waited until she was gone, then went back to my car, completely hollowed out. For years I'd been angry at a ghost. But now I knew the truth. She wasn't hiding because she didn't love me. She was hiding because she did. I didn't sleep that night. I booked a motel room just off the highway, but every time I closed my eyes, all I saw was her face. The way she smiled. The bracelet on her wrist. The sound of her voice saying she ruined my life. That part kept echoing in my head like a bad song on repeat. She thought I hated her. And the sickest part? A week ago, I probably did. But now? I didn't even know what I felt. Rage. Relief. Grief. Love. All tangled together. It was like every emotion in my body had been turned up to full volume. And there was nowhere to put any of it. I knew I had to do something. Anything. Because driving home like nothing happened would have made me explode. I wasn't ready to confront her face to face, not yet, but I also couldn't walk away without letting her know I'd been there. So I wrote a note. I kept it short. Just a few sentences. I saw you today. You looked happy. Thank you for keeping the bracelet. I don't hate you. I just wish I'd known. I didn't sign it. I didn't need to. She'd know. The next morning, I waited until the craft fair was winding down. I stayed across the street until I saw her packing up boxes, distracted by a neighbor waving goodbye. Then I crossed the road, walked right up to her booth when no one was watching, and slipped the note under a stack of display cards. My heart was pounding like a war drum the entire time. I didn't look back as I walked away. I didn't wait to see if she found it. I didn't even stay in town. I just got in my car, pulled out of Bayshore, and drove. I didn't know what she'd do. Maybe nothing. Maybe she'd cry. Maybe she'd throw it away. Maybe she'd try to find me. I didn't know. But now she knew. She knew I was alive. She knew I didn't hate her. And for now, that was enough. I'd been home for 2 days when it happened. I hadn't told anyone where I went. Not even my best friend. I'd replayed the trip in my head 100 times, wondering if I'd made a mistake leaving that note. What if it shook something loose? What if she got scared and disappeared again? What if she didn't care at all? But then, late Tuesday night, my phone buzzed. Blocked number. No caller ID. Just a single text. I kept the bracelet because it was the only part of you I could carry. I froze. I didn't breathe for a full minute. There was no name, no signature, but I didn't need one. It was her. It had to be her. I stared at the screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard. My heart was doing somersaults. I'd wanted this for so long, a sign, anything to prove she still cared. But now that it was in front of me, I didn't know what to say. I typed and deleted a dozen replies. Everything felt too heavy or too hollow. Finally, I sent just 3 words. Why did you? There was a pause. A long one. I thought maybe she'd blocked me. Maybe it was too much. But then a new message came through. Because I thought if I stayed, you'd grow up afraid of me. Or worse, like me. I didn't know what she meant by like me. What was so bad about her? What had she done, or seen, or been through that made her believe I'd be better off at a funeral than in her life? Another message followed. I've watched you from far away. Every birthday. Every graduation photo someone tagged. I stayed out of your life because I thought that was the only good thing I could give you. Distance. I sat there, stunned. She'd been watching me. She knew. And suddenly I realized, I wasn't the only one carrying this grief. She was too. She had just carried it in silence. I didn't reply right away. I didn't know how. There was too much to unpack. Too much history to rewrite. But she had reached back. And now? Now I had to decide what to do with it. It took me 4 days to write back. Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew once I did, this wasn't a mystery anymore. It would be real. We'd be people again. A mother and a child, not shadows and secrets. I finally texted her. If you're still watching, stop. I don't want distance anymore. I stared at the screen for an hour, afraid to hit send. Then I did. And instantly regretted it. But she replied 5 minutes later. Then I'll stop watching. Tell me where to be. I didn't think I'd cry. I thought I was beyond that kind of vulnerability with her. But something about those 6 words, tell me where to be, broke me. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She wasn't making excuses. She was asking for a way back. I told her to meet me halfway. Neutral ground. Not in her town, not in mine. Just a quiet cafe off the highway where no one would know us or care what we looked like sitting across from each other after 15 years apart. She agreed. When I pulled into the parking lot, I almost turned around. I kept picturing that casket. The funeral. Me at 15, alone in my room, blaming myself for everything. All the years of birthdays without her, the milestones, the long silences I filled with made-up reasons why she left. But then I saw her through the window. Same posture. Same nervous habit of tugging her sleeve when she's anxious. She stood when I walked in. And for a second, I didn't see a stranger. I saw my mom. The one who used to sing off-key while making pancakes. The one who stayed up late helping me with school projects. The one who vanished. We didn't hug right away. We just sat down and looked at each other. She spoke first, quietly. She told me about the night she left. About the fear. About how my dad's control wasn't fists or shouting, it was quiet, strategic, suffocating. She said she tried to stay for me, but she was breaking, and she was afraid if she broke in front of me, I'd never recover from it. So she ran. She found a lawyer. Got help. Changed her identity. And when she saw the life I was building without her, she convinced herself that staying away was protecting me. She cried. Not sobs, just quiet, breathless tears like she didn't think she deserved more. I didn't forgive her on the spot. This wasn't a movie. But I told her the truth. You broke my heart. But I'm tired of carrying that weight alone. And then I reached across the table. Not for a hug, not yet. Just to touch her hand. And she took it, fingers trembling. We sat there for a long time. No big dramatic ending. Just 2 people staring across a table, realizing that the space between them wasn't as wide as it used to be. We don't know what happens next. We're not planning holidays or pretending this is easy. But the silence is over. And for now, that's enough.